Warcraft's story starts in 1994, born as a real-time strategy game viewed from above. Soldiers cross open fields under player command, pushing toward dominion over the lands of Azeroth. Armies clash for territory. Nick Carpenter brands the game a sleeper hit early on, with word of mouth carrying it forward, one player telling the next. Excitement builds. The line runs straight from the first Warcraft to Warcraft 2, then on to Warcraft 3, with this third installment marking the first real push toward story alongside gameplay. Narrative finally rivals mechanics in importance. Nick Carpenter wanted Warcraft 3 to crack open the Alliance's reputation for nobility, exposing flaws beneath the banner. Orc culture deepens with vivid texture, a cursed people once great, their fall etched into every design choice. Roots reach deep. Momentum builds fast once WoW reaches players, pulling in far more people than anyone expects. Servers buckle under the rush, and the company balloons overnight, turning from a small studio into a sprawling operation straining to keep pace with the machine it built. Talk of a Warcraft movie circulates for years before anyone moves on it. 8 years back, serious planning finally starts. The idea finally takes shape. Michael Morhaime notes Legendary's excitement over Warcraft from the start. Responsibility anchors their approach, aimed squarely at fans who love the games. Players come first. Thomas Tull calls Blizzard's creation an amazing world, arguably the most successful entertainment property in history. Nothing here feels ordinary. Hours pass geeking out together over the care poured into every character. Blizzard feels the genuine love behind the effort, recognizing a shared push toward a great story rather than merely a good one, built inside the universe they had spent years shaping. Meetings with Hollywood pile up, each one probing how a Warcraft film might take shape. Then a crossroads hits. Maybe the right story simply won't come together, or maybe no production scale fits the story's needs. One day, the team brings in Duncan Jones. A joking order to stop filming sends laughter around the room. Long work goes into landing the right screenplay. Duncan Jones ultimately supplies the missing ingredient, telling the story from both the orc and human sides, since players could always choose either faction in the game. Off-camera, the point comes up again. Duncan Jones already understood these characters and their franchise before he ever sat down to write. Word reaches the war chief, some orcs still live. Duncan Jones calls the Warcraft universe vast, almost too big to summarize. Figuring out what the film would even amount to starts as a massive task. He wants a film that stands on its own, no prior knowledge required. What makes it work, he argues, is that it plays like a war movie, letting audiences empathize with people who seem good on both sides. Humans thrown against Durotan's orcs, an orc who seems every bit the equal of anyone wearing armor. Neither side holds the high ground alone. John Jashney frames the studio's job simply, to carry audiences into new worlds. Every story needs to land as relatable and emotional, whatever the setting. Warcraft fits naturally. On screen, a closing line offers warmth even amid war, a small comfort dropped into the chaos. Working this closely with Blizzard marks a rare stroke of luck by every account. Concept artists shape a look that reads as realistic without losing what players already recognize from the games. Familiarity matters. Talk on set keeps circling back to the game's compact geography, a world crossable in no time at all. The team chases that same scale on screen. Azeroth needed its own identity, never a mirror held up to Earth. The crew translates that aesthetic fully into cinematic terms, folding the game's sense of a small, walkable world into every wide shot. Duncan Jones calls the whole process pretty extraordinary, hoping audiences enjoy the film the way he enjoyed making it. Then comes the call. A countdown lands, and the first take of Warcraft begins rolling. Chris Metzen struggles to put the moment into words, having spent his entire adult life shaping this idea. Handing it to someone else once felt terrifying. Those doubts fade fast. He settles back into life, simply a fan again. After 20 years inside this world, seeing it through new eyes amounts to a real gift, something rare enough to feel entirely unexpected. It feels special. A prop discussion breaks out over eyeline. A tennis ball stands in for something far larger. That eyeline, someone explains, actually marks a monster. Travis Fimmel describes a production built on a bigger scale and scope than usual. Draft horses replace the standard mounts used elsewhere. Swords 3 times the ordinary size appear in his hands. Behind it all stands a stunt team handling tremendous set pieces. Duncan Jones counts 2 beats allowed for Travis Fimmel, marking the timing on set. A shouted cue lands right on beat, and the take begins. Blown away, one colleague admits it plainly. Travis Fimmel commands attention the instant he enters a room. Colleagues say they believe he might actually pick up a sword or battle axe without flinching. That conviction makes him someone you'd want on your side. On set, a whispered name breaks the quiet. Medivh. King Lane checks on his condition, asking if he has recovered. A single word answers back, restored, marking a turn in the character. Ben Foster takes on the role of the Guardian. The production counts itself fortunate that he agreed to join the film. Ben Foster reflects on the conversations he enjoyed most while making the film. Chief among them, the concept of magic itself. Does it flow through him or does he generate it on his own? How to harness the power and what it costs turns into the real weight of the role. In character, he warns that no one grasps the forces he contends with. His ability to harness magic weighs on the character's shoulders, colleagues note. On screen, a demon draws a startled question. Did you see it? Off camera, Ben Foster brands it a fun job, chuckling over the odd questions it raises. How exactly does lightning move through someone? A laugh punctuates the thought. Duncan Jones simply enjoys watching him work. He keeps doing something interesting on set, bringing details the director never expected. Dominic Cooper draws praise as incredibly talented, taking on the role of King Lane. A line about the land and the kingdom sets the tone for one throne room take. Cooper gestures past camera toward the throne itself, calling it his, yonder across the set. Cooper calls the project an exciting one to join, unlike anything he has worked on before. Huge horses share the studio space with the cast, adding to the scale. Massive amounts of armor pile onto the actors for every take. The armor comes across as stunning on film by one crew member's account after watching dailies. Costume design across the board draws the same praise. A single shouted order sends the charge across the field. Physically demanding work defines the shoot, but the cast accepts it, part of the deal. Once you have seen the imagination behind the production, the toll makes sense. Cut lands, and cheers break out on set. Paula Patton joins the cast and, by all accounts, delivers an amazing performance. Physical strain stacks up fast, with a great deal of fighting built into the role. Beyond the stunts, she carries the performance of an outsider caught between two worlds. On screen, a taunt cuts across the room. You think you're fearsome? A sharper line cracks back. Orc children keep pets fiercer than that. Patton calls the world incredible and loves the fantasy built into it. Complexity draws her in further, especially through Garona. One foot plants in the orc world, the other in the human one. That split fascinates her, though it also unsettles her. She admits she did not know exactly how to play it. Tremendous determination defines Paula Patton, according to those who worked with her. That same drive translates easily onto the character of Garona. Patton describes Garona as fierce, a genuinely strong warrior. Vulnerability sits underneath that strength, along with a distinctly feminine side. New feelings and new sights start crowding in for the character, things she has never known before. That novelty, Patton says, felt refreshing and exciting to play. A countdown rolls off camera. 3, 2, 1, go. Patton compares the moment to a childhood dream, finally within reach, a chance to do exactly this. Duncan Jones marvels at the vast, interesting collection of characters assembled for the film. Every day throws up new challenges on set, and Duncan Jones treats all of it as great fun. Cut lands one more time and Duncan Jones pronounces it great. Cutting there comes the reply, closing out the take. Duncan Jones gives the cue for action, and the cameras roll. A visual effects supervisor joins the crew. Bill Westenhofer, a longtime hardcore Warcraft player in his own right. Digital characters and worlds that don't actually exist resist a simple location shoot. Visual effects take over instead. Across the set, a rallying cry for Azeroth and the Alliance cuts through the air, drowning out the hum of camera equipment. The scope keeps expanding. Complex environments, packed crowds, and a wide range of digital characters pile onto the schedule, each one demanding its own pass through the effects pipeline. For the effects team, it plays out like a dream project. A previous shot frames the gate, then drops down into the camp below, mapping the geography the cameras will later have to match exactly. Layout and blocking take shape well before the cameras ever roll. Nothing here stands finished. Close collaboration with Blizzard's concept artists shapes every design choice. The team pushes for something realistic enough to stand on screen, yet still instantly familiar to anyone who knows the games. That balance drives every decision on the art side. Bill Westenhofer turns to Elwyn Forrest. Anyone could point a camera at a real forest and start filming, but longtime players know the look by heart. Here, the trees stand just a little larger than life. Scale carries the effect, and animators fold digital characters in later to complete the frame. On screen, Garona delivers grim news. The Frostwolves have fallen, and the group stands alone now. No reply comes. This sequence marks a tour de force for the visual effects team. A sizable set holds a substantial crowd of extras, though what audiences see on screen amounts to only a fraction of the full picture. Off in the distance, the environment stretches far beyond the practical build, continuing straight out of black morass, with the rest of the orc encampment visible off to the side, caught in flames while the battle rages. Thousands of orcs surround the portal, and even the human soldiers need digital extension into the distance to fill out the ranks. The workload piles up fast. Jeff White points to something beyond the compelling character performances that drew him to the project. What hooks him most is the sheer variety of creatures he and the team bring to life. The Griffin ranks as the most emblematic creature in the Warcraft world. Riding one directly makes it a genuinely tricky build, since both Lothar and Khadgar have to sit astride the animal on camera. A mechanical buck stands in for the saddle, built to move and articulate in just the right way. Onto that rig, ILM's animators layer the head, neck, feet, and wings, then set the whole thing in motion until it plays like a real takeoff. Jeff White breaks down the anatomy, take a lion, fuse it with an eagle, and the result comes covered in feathers. The team solves the feather problem by growing them the same way hair grows, strand by strand. Each individual feather then needs its own hair grown onto it to build out every barb and layer. Nobody on the team has attempted anything quite like it before. Hal Hickel singles out the griffins and the orcs' giant wolves, the two creatures animated entirely by hand. For the animation team, that handcrafted work brings real satisfaction. It stands out especially on a production built mostly around motion capture. Westenhover flags a specific problem with the frost wolves. Each one has to carry a fully armored orc into battle. An orc alone weighs around 500 pounds. The wolf needs real bulk to match. Too much bulk though, and the animal starts to resemble an elephant instead of a wolf. Nailing the proportions means finding a build that still comfortably fits an orc-sized rider. These wolves come across as huge, powerful animals. The design team turns wolf ownership into something of a status symbol on screen, reserved for a select few orcs who ride and keep them. Duncan Jones and Westenhover go back and forth over posture until they land on one that reads strong enough to carry an orc's weight, without towering so far over the human standing nearby that the scale breaks. On set, one voice volunteers for the stunt, and another barks a warning to stand clear. Someone off to the side asks what's coming next. The answer, another round against the golem. Lothar's shout cuts through the noise, taunting the creature with a jab about its clay face. Gavin Bouquet calls the golem one of the more interesting builds on the film. That interest starts with a small sculpture made by a young sculptor working in Eastern Europe, one that matches almost exactly what Duncan Jones pictured for the creature. The production reaches out and pays the sculptor directly for his design. His original model measures barely more than handheld. Months later, the finished golem stands 16 feet tall. While Medivh works the clay, the golem exists a practical effect right there on set. The instant it starts to move, the visual effects team quietly takes over. A mountain of tiny details decides so much of a character's believability. Every film reaches a point when its character truly comes alive, something close to a birth. For the team, that beat carries real satisfaction. Duncan Jones shouts cut, praising the take on the spot. Praise for ILM closes things out. The team there keeps pushing the envelope on what's possible. Having them on board to help translate Warcraft to the screen marks pure good fortune. Duncan Jones counts the chance to work with these heads of department as rare fortune, the kind only a production of this scale could arrange. Talent like that rarely lines up on one film. A fitting session opens the next setup. On the fitting platform, a tailor presses for a straighter stance, then a pin closes the gap in the hem. The adjustment takes seconds. Nobody breaks the pose until the fabric sits right. Duncan Jones turns to Maze Rubio's resume for proof of her range. Apocalypto behind her, Avatar behind her, and this project next. Her craftsmanship draws his praise without qualification. Across the room, a greeting passes between two crew members before the cameras roll again. Maze Rubio starts from Blizzard's own ground rules. Certain lines, emblems, colors, and characters stay untouched no matter what she designs around them. Anthropology fills the rest of the gap. Social tiers form her real brief. A full ladder of costume has to run from monarchs down to the shantytowns before any single outfit reads believable. 650 costumes leave her workshop by the end of the count. 6 cutters, 2 top-tier assistant designers, and a supervisor she calls the best in the business fill out her core team, and headcount peaks at 70 hands during the busiest weeks. Fabric arrives from Germany, France, Mexico, India, China, and Thailand, a supply chain that spans the globe for one film. The scale earns her a single word: epic. Crew hears the call for readiness, and the cameras start turning. Lothar's armor carries a maverick edge, nothing about it built to draw the eye. That restraint makes the character land harder than any flash could. Travis Fimmel treats the costume fittings like recess. The gear turns into playtime, the same kind of dress-up a kid never grows out of. For him, the armor opens a world nobody has walked through on screen before. Maes Rubeo frames his civilian wardrobe the same way, distinctive without ever tipping into spectacle. Another take starts on Duncan Jones's cue, and Khadgar's search for answers about the Fel takes center frame this time. Maes Rubeo builds his look around a single idea, a man who lives out of one duffel bag and nothing more. He travels light because the story needs him constant, never shifting costume or bearing from set to set. That fixed silhouette gives the character stability. At first, the actor behind Khadgar balks. No armor, no sword, nothing to swing in a fight sequence. A day or two on set changes his mind, once the real weight of plate armor and a blade settles into other actors' hands. Soft robes start to look like the smarter trade. He ends up calling them his pajamas for the shoot, only half joking. For King Lena's wardrobe, Maes Rubeo leans on producers willing to chase down exclusive fabric most productions would skip. Every yard has to earn its place. Beautiful, luxurious, interesting enough to survive a close-up. Hand finishing carries through every seam. The work reads on screen, not just on a hanger. Of every character in her lineup, she ranks him as the most luscious of all. A quick styling exchange hangs in the air on set before Dominic Cooper picks up the thread on camera. In his account, these costumes carry a scale well past ordinary, built to feel larger than life. Extra layers of dynamic detail push every look up another notch. Simply wearing the costume turns into a workout in itself. Heavy, demanding, nothing like slipping into street clothes. On screen, King Lane rallies his men with a vow to bring the gate down with the Guardians' help. Off-screen, Cooper admits nobody just throws the costume on and walks into a scene. The body needs readiness first. Everything about the look runs exaggerated, oversized, built for a frame far bigger than everyday life. Crew hears another call for action, and Medivh, the Guardian of Dalaran, steps back into frame. His cape of raven feathers catches the light in a way no single feather could manage alone. 5 weeks go into building it because a needle sets every feather in place one at a time. A strict pattern governs each placement, every feather angled to catch light the same way the last one does. That oily, luscious sheen ends up reading almost like a spill of oil across the fabric. The whole costume asks for something close to meditation, since these robes trace back to a monastery in Dalaran. Wearing a cloak made entirely of feathers, the actor behind Medivh feels a little empowered inside it, by his own account. He compares the finished piece to a giant boa wrapped around his shoulders. Laughter breaks out on set at the image. For Lady Taria, Maes Rubeo hunts down fabric that catches light like a real jewel, nothing synthetic standing in for the genuine article. Only the best makes the cut, pieces manufactured specifically for this production and no other. On screen, Taria speaks of years of peace across her lands, a calm that her wardrobe has to carry along with her words. Pants set her apart from the rest of the court's silhouettes, a deliberate mark of strength stitched into the cut of every pair. A pointed question about King Lane's faith interrupts one take, testing loyalty in a single beat. Ruth Negga speaks for the wardrobe department in a different register. Maes Rubeo, in her eyes, turns out one astonishing costume after another, each dress topping the last. Negga calls it extraordinary, then brands the designer a genius, without much hesitation. One image sticks with her most. More of one fabric, less of another, exactly to her taste. She credits hours upon hours the team spends on the smallest details, the real source of her pleasure in wearing the results. In character, Garona explains taking a prisoner at the gate, a way to learn from the enemy, a rare private admission on screen. Maes Rubeo frames her as the strongest will in the whole cast of characters, an outcast pushed out by her own people for carrying hybrid blood. That exile writes itself into the first costume, nothing but pieces of spoil salvaged off old battles. Every scrap comes from somebody else's fight, never her own. Negga calls the whole job magnificent, then circles back to something she has noticed about costume itself. Wear it long enough, and the person underneath starts to slip into the role. The story eventually forces human armor onto Garona, a look she despises on sight. Putting it on, the actor behind Garona feels the weight immediately, heavy, stiff, nothing like her usual costume. She laughs off the discomfort, then admits it works in the story's favor. The extra weight deepens the character and pulls her further into the part. Back on the fitting floor, one bolt of fabric goes under a lamp for a closer look. Light catches it and throws off a spread of different hues from a single weave. A short back and forth over the fabric ends the take before the camera cuts away. Duncan Jones credits Maes Rubeo with something rarer than good sewing. She climbs inside the heads of the Blizzard team that built the original game costumes. From there, she finds a way to make those designs read real on screen without losing the style fans already know from the game. A long exhale closes her thought, and she calls it simply the job she loves most. On screen, the film's own rallying cry rings out, a call for Azeroth and the alliance that closes the scene. Nailing the orcs right stands out as the hardest problem on Warcraft, according to one interview voice. Behind the monitor, a satisfied reaction breaks the quiet. This one works. Every character needs enough humanity for an audience to grasp, not merely fear. On screen, a warning cuts through the moment. The others would abandon him if they saw what he had turned into. A promise answers back. He will show them himself. Duncan Jones credits sheer timing for the film's biggest gamble. Production lands at the exact point where computer-generated character work can finally hold a close-up, even an extreme one, without losing an audience's empathy. The tools finally catch up. Talk turns to the child Durotan will name, wondering what a chieftain calls his son. The news lands a surprise. A son, unplanned and sudden. Bill Westenhover, a two-time Academy Award winner for visual effects, joins the crew alongside Jeff White, whose CG character work raises the bar again. From the outset, the team agrees that staying true to Blizzard's aesthetic for these towering figures means building the orcs digitally rather than practically. Equally crucial, the orcs have to work like characters, not spectacle. Nothing about them can pull an audience out of the film. Realism sets the baseline while performance carries the real weight. That commitment matters more than any single effect. Body motion capture stays close to familiar methods for the team, but the faces break new ground entirely. New territory opens up in the sheer level of facial detail the capture now reaches. Tight close-ups on several orc characters need a level of fine detail CG faces rarely reach. Earlier facial capture technology simply couldn't manage it. Tiny micro-movements ripple across the skin around the eyes, through the eyebrows, and along the mouth, pushing the shots to another level entirely. The first shot the team delivers frames a close-up on Durotan, restrained on the surface but carrying real weight underneath. Subtlety hides the beats that bring the character to life. A line about feeling watched closes the beat, quiet and unsettled. Jeff White points to the shot, proof to the rest of the filmmaking team that the orcs can genuinely work on screen. The first viewing floors everyone in the room. Every flicker of expression comes through intact, exactly what the crew set out to capture. Rob Kaczynski remembers Jeff White from ILM and Bill Westenhover arriving with a 30-second clip. They put it on the screen, and an orc looks back at him. Flesh and blood seem to sit right there in the image, no less real than anyone in the room. Bill Westenhover points to the eyes, small, subtle responses moving on their own. Life settles into the shot, and the memory of that instant still carries weight for him. On screen, a reference to powerful magic hangs mid-sentence, cut short by the take. That footage convinces Rob Kaczynski the production had nailed it. Something in him knows immediately, this would turn out great. Hair ranks among the hardest problems in computer graphics, harder than most people expect. The team builds a custom tool, nicknamed Haircraft, purpose-built for grooming digital hair. Development stretches into a major undertaking on its own, driven largely by the sheer complexity of the hairstyles involved. Duncan Jones treats the orc design like character work first. Every one of them has to carry real emotional weight in the film. The team never built these merely to frighten. Genuine nuance runs through what each character has to do on screen. With that in mind, the production leans toward actors who already understand motion capture, who know what the process requires and how to work within it. On screen, Durotan names himself in full, son of Garad, chieftain of the Frostwolf clan. Toby Kebbell describes motion capture's real trick. Audiences see the phenomenal artwork built by the animators, but the essence underneath, the way Durotan thinks, the way he moves, belongs entirely to his performance. At one point, his voice shifts into another language altogether, testing the character's cadence. Finding that voice takes real effort by his own account, and he wants Durotan to come across as someone who ponders before speaking. Body language carries the rest of the character for him. The way Durotan moves reads like someone who has spent years tracking and hunting alone, always testing the land around him. That detail matters enormously to Kebbell. On screen, a line about meat and life underscores the same idea. Sustenance always present, always earned. A pointed jab breaks the calm. Doesn't it seem strange that they lost their home once Gul'dan rose to power? Flatly, an answer comes back. One orc alone cannot destroy a world. Rob Kaczynski ranks as a world-level World of Warcraft player, having logged more hours inside the game than almost anyone else attached to the production. Normally, an actor lands a role and then spends a few months researching the character before filming starts. For him, though, the research stretches back 10 years, built around this world, this game, and this particular character long before the job existed. Nobody in the history of film research prepares this thoroughly for a role, by his own account, or wants a part this badly. Pressure builds entirely from within. He needs to nail Durotan, for himself and for anyone watching alike. On screen, a line calls God's strange creatures, dropped almost in passing. Rob Kaczynski expected the gear itself to fight him. A helmet rigged with cameras, trailing wires, a plain gray suit, no props to hold on to. Instead, all of it opens space for imagination rather than closing it down. That trade, he says, marks a genuine gift, one that few other jobs on a film set offer. On screen, a voice cuts in. What happened? A quiet line owns the mistake. He read it wrong. Fell magic tears through the clan, a voice warns, leaving little time. Duncan Jones counts down and calls for the next take. 2, 1, action. A personal bond with Warcraft comes easily to Rob Kaczynski since his wife plays too. The year before, a new baby had set them up for time away from work, a full year off by plan. Then, in November, a call comes through for an audition. He raises it with her. She balks at first, insisting he can't take it until she hears the word Warcraft, and the answer flips entirely. He has to do it. A short laugh closes the exchange. Duncan Jones cues up another take, moving the set toward Daniel Wu's scenes. Hong Kong action cinema makes up most of Wu's resume, yet this role delivers the most physical work of his career. A smooth, almost serpentine evil runs through the way Gul'dan moves, difficult to sustain physically. Wu holds a crouched position through most of the performance. Every muscle stays engaged even while he appears to stand still. On screen, Gul'dan sneers at a weakened clan and brands its chieftain a traitor. Daniel Wu points out that Gul'dan predates every other orc in the story, old enough to carry real gravitas whoever plays him. He once asked Duncan Jones directly why an older actor hadn't taken the part. Physically, the director told him, an older performer likely couldn't sustain a role this demanding on the body. The best part of the disguise, Wu suggests, comes from how few viewers will ever recognize him inside the character at all. Total disappearance into a role marks an actor's highest ambition, and Gul'dan delivers exactly that. On screen, a new dawn arrives for the Horde, and the closing line draws a stark line: instill fear or burn fuel for someone else's war. An actor reflects on 2 earlier films that barely touched physical stunt work, projects built more on dialogue than movement. This one plays differently. Compared with those, the new production plays like a candy shop, stacked with far more physical work than anything attempted before, and every sentence about it carries real excitement. Cut lands the beat, and the take ends there. Reading the script for the first time stirs something instant in the same actor. A feeling that the shoot ahead will run strange and consuming. That instinct proves right almost immediately. Stuart Finnegan describes fights that pit humans against orcs, full of horses, falls, and stunts built to look enormous on screen. Wirework threads through nearly every sequence, and it plays brilliant even in early footage. Riggers hoist performers into the air and drop them onto moving horses without a visible seam. Scale defines the whole production. Nothing here feels small. Duncan Jones gives the go-ahead, and the take begins. Dominic Cooper carries the weight of a full suit of armor through every take. The body takes the brunt of it. Fitness sets the baseline just to keep pace with whatever the day throws at him, and the day rarely throws the same thing twice. Paula Patton points to the appeal of watching an actor perform a stunt in person rather than through a double standing in. No stand-in, no shortcut. That authenticity marks the goal she chases throughout the shoot. Duncan Jones orders another take. Work on the floor resumes at once. Training turns into a daily constant, a way to match the physical bar the film keeps raising while the schedule wears on. Praise for the stunt team comes without hesitation. Duncan Jones walks through the next beat before it rolls. A man rises, and in the same instant, a hit sends someone else flying backward. Ready and action land back to back. The stunt fires exactly to plan. Roughly a quarter of the way through principal photography, Duncan Jones stands on the set built for Elwyn Forest. Stunt work fills the day, more of it than most days carry. The forest set holds all of it. Tom Struthers rigs Paula Patton onto wires and sends her flying across the set toward a waiting tree, holding her suspended there once she reaches it. A voice off camera calls the mark. The rig locks into place and holds. A grunt cuts through the rig work, the wire taking her weight. Paula Patton calls the sequence fun to play. Even then, the harness sits tight enough to bite. Adrenaline rushes in once the line goes taut, and discomfort turns into something closer to a thrill. A shout from Duncan Jones sends the take rolling. The lift begins at once. A performer hoists another off the ground, hurls him across the room, and pins him there without visible strain. The strength on display looks capable of crushing a person outright, and nothing about the take suggests otherwise. Glenn Annis describes a magic blast landing square in the chest, the kind that sends a body on a short, violent ride like a bird pinned to a wire. A ratchet does the real work, hit the mark, and the line yanks him back instantly. By his own account, it's insane. Weightlessness lasts a second or two before the fall slams to a stop, and a laugh breaks right after. Hammers fly, swords close in from every side. Berkeley Duffield describes the space turning into a bloodbath thick with killing and constant motion. A large battle sequence has occupied the crew for the better part of a week. This stretch of it still runs today. One take lands clean, enough it seems, to call it done. The trick needs literal balance along the very edge of a sword blade. Nothing about it forgives error. Someone floats the idea of another pass. The answer lands a score just shy of perfect, delivered with a hint of camaraderie in the reply. This battle carries real weight. Lothar loses his son inside it. Blackhand, who has already clashed with Lothar once and lost a hand in that fight, seizes the moment to take his revenge, killing Lothar's son directly in front of him. A shout sends the rig into motion. A stunt performer calls it a pretty great death to play. Carried up on a line, thrown by Blackhand, and slammed into a magical wall on the far side of the set, the fall looks worse than it feels. Multiple camera angles will likely cover the stab, the lift, and the throw, each a separate piece before the sequence cuts together. Dying, it turns out, takes considerable work to sell convincingly. A single call goes up. Fire. Archers loose on cue, and the volley streaks across the set. John Street watches the big clash come together, orcs merging into the battle lines from every direction. Bodies go flying wherever an orc connects. Sheer size and strength throw grown men clear across the set. Duncan Jones credits Tom Struthers, who has coordinated the stunts throughout, with an especially heavy reliance on wire pulls here. Wire pulls do the heavy lifting. Each one simulates the force behind an orc's strike, throwing a body back hard enough to sell impossible strength. Bodies fly in every direction across the set, yet the result plays like organized chaos rather than disorder. It amounts to a huge undertaking. Everyone on the crew pulls toward the same vision, and that shared effort carries the larger story of good set against evil and of who wins out in the end. For the people doing it, the whole shoot plays like a childhood dream let loose on a soundstage. It feels like a kid's dream, someone says. Doing exactly this day after day marks the job itself. On screen, Lothar senses something coming, and he admits he can feel it already. Eddie Saul explains that Madame Tussauds has partnered with Legendary and worked alongside Weta Workshop to build the exhibit's Warcraft experience. Two studios pool their crafts here. One shapes films, the other shapes world-class figures. According to Saul, the partnership runs smoothly from the start, and no other company can render these characters with the same precision. Working closely with the filmmakers, the team builds its sets using the same techniques employed on the film itself. Every surface borrows directly from production reference. Exhibit and film set start to blur into one another. For the first time, Madame Tussauds folds virtual reality into one of its sets. Crews custom-build bespoke helmets just for this experience. Saul promises the effect will feel like stepping straight into the world of Warcraft. A design team settles on a layout with two Warcraft characters flanking the room on either side. Lothar stands in full battle armor on one side. The orc Duratan holds a rocky outcrop opposite him, cutting an imposing figure. Almost by design, the pair plays like sentries guarding the space. Concept sketches, placement, and every stage between demand a long process, and enormous effort goes into the figures standing there. Duratan's voice cuts through the workshop. If his people mean to survive, they need a home here. A bag of clay starts the process, rolled out and layered by hand from the inside working outward. 5 weeks, roughly, carries the figure through this gradual stage. The shaping takes its time, never rushing. From clay, the figure moves to the mold shop where plaster casts it and wax fills the cast. Duratan's line returns. Their world dies, nothing left to go back to. Louise Budrick molds Lothar's head today, roping it up each morning before pouring in hot wax. The mixture cools, then pours back out. Heavy pots and scalding wax turn the job delicate at every step. Scars mark Lothar's face. Removing each mold piece takes care to avoid damage. The mold releases a finished all-wax head. From there, the head moves on to hair and coloring, where insertion begins, strand by strand. On screen, a query about why she has come draws a short answer from Garona, to save her people. A blank wax head arrives in the hair department to start the next stage. 4 weeks go into inserting the hair, one strand of human hair at a time. A painter takes over from there, spending about a week working oil paints across the head. Staining the wax comes first, followed by tapping on layer after layer of fine detail. Garona's skin carries an unusual shade of green, and matching it turns into the hardest part of the job. Reference material from the filmmakers keeps the color on target. Once hairstyle and paint both pass approval, the figure moves straight to costume. Durotan's voice returns. For orcs, no life exists but war, though the humans' help might change that. Realism drives the costume team's work, since these characters have lived through battle and other worlds. 2 weeks go into breaking the garments down. Costume breakdown, at its core, ages new fabric until it looks lived in. Garona's costume comes together in-house, built from reference supplied by Legendary. Sourcing leather proves the hardest part of the build. 25 different types eventually make it into the finished piece. Costumes finally go onto the figures, and gravitas settles over them the instant they do. Lothar's voice cuts in. Whatever the plan holds, it needs to happen right away. Set detail reaches deep here, right down to a throne still in its earliest stages. Dressing will bring it closer to the version seen in the film. Layer after layer still needs to go on to give the throne its ornate finish, banners eventually flanking it left and right. Lions take their place on either side too. A virtual reality area rounds out the exhibit, where guests sit, pull down a helmet, and land suddenly inside a virtual Warcraft world. Practical questions trail close behind the spectacle. Supporting a figure the size of Durotan takes a large metal armature underneath, holding him solid and upright in the space. Unveiling day brings the cast to Madame Tussauds to meet their own likenesses for the first time. Seeing Durotan leaves one visitor gobsmacked, calling the result astonishing. Garona's figure, played on screen by Paula Patton, takes her place in the Berlin location, a central character in the film. Fimmel calls the whole experience absolutely surreal. Nothing prepared Fimmel for how good the figure would look. Its realism startles him, and he credits real artistry behind the work. Kebbel calls it a huge honor to stand beside a character he played on screen. The eyes hold his attention most, feeling as if they track him wherever he moves. Kebbel settles on one word: remarkable. Every strand of the hair went in by hand, he notes, unlike the wig he wore during filming. Time and detail define these artists' work, and Kebbel tips his hat to them for it. Something about Madame Tussauds still feels singular, letting visitors walk directly among the characters. Fimmel points out the scale. An orc this size matches its footprint in the films exactly, and he expects fans to enjoy it here. A roar breaks over the hall. Pride runs through the team behind the exhibit, and fans visibly lean into the experience around them. One self-described Warcraft fan finds the wax versions genuinely impressive, floored by their scale. The orc's sheer size stands out above everything else. Standing close changes the experience entirely. Figures match their game counterparts closely enough that visitors call them stunning, one admitting he walked in and simply said, "Wow." Praise for Madame Tussauds keeps surfacing among the crowd. Stepping into another world, visitors agree, matches exactly what the exhibit offers, mirroring what the film itself tries to do in a way nothing else quite manages.